All right. So let's go ahead and go back to John chapter 4. I was somewhat hopeful that we will get through and finish this chapter, but we'll see. If we don't, that's okay. We'll finish up the next time. But we're still looking here in John chapter 4, and remember, we're looking at this from the standpoint of what can we learn from Jesus in his own efforts in teaching this woman at the well, and also those who would return after the woman at the well would go back into Samaria, and other people would then come to Jesus, and they would ask him to stay with them for a number of days so that they could also be taught by him. So we're looking at his example and seeing what sort of application we can apply for ourselves, and how we can be more like him in our efforts to reach others. All right, so let's go ahead and read John chapter 4. Somebody read for us 27 through 32, and then somebody else 33 through 38.
At this point, his disciples came, and they marveled that he talked with a woman. Yet no one said, "What do you see?" or "Why are you talking with her?" The woman then left her water pot, went her way into the city, and said to the men, "Come and see a man who told me all the things that I ever did. Could this be the Christ?" Then they went out of the city and came to him. And in the meantime his disciples urged him, saying, "Rabbi, eat." But he said to them, "I have food to eat of which you do not know."
33 to 38.
Therefore the disciples said to another, "Has anyone brought him anything to eat?" Jesus said to them, "My food is to do the will of him who sent me and finish his work. Do you not say there are still 4 months and then comes the harvest? Behold, I say to you, lift up your eyes and look at the fields, for they are already white for harvest. And when he who reaps receives wages and gathers food for eternal life, that both he who sows and he who reaps may rejoice together. For in this saying is true, one sows and another reaps. I send you to reap for which you have not labored. Others have labored, and you have entered into their labor."
Thank you, sir. All right, so kind of getting us back into where we were. Remember, following this conversation that Jesus has with the woman at the well, his disciples return, and what was their mindset when they came back? What are you doing, right? And the text is actually somewhat specific. What did they not say or ask? Anything in regard to what do you seek, or why are you talking to her? So they didn't have any real interest in saying, okay, well, is there a reason that you're talking to this Samaritan woman? What's the purpose here? More so, they're just like, what are you doing? Like that kind of mindset, it seemed like, or at least that kind of tone. Well, at that point, this woman then goes back into the city, and of course she's going to go tell others, and it seems she left with hay. She left the water pot she came to fill. So she's extremely excited about the things that she has heard. She's going back into the city. She's going to share those things, and others are going to come back with her. And Jesus in this moment, his disciples, they're more focused on, well, do you have anything to eat? Right? Did anybody bring him something to eat? Right? We went and got what we needed. Did anybody bring him anything to eat? And they're completely oblivious to what's actually happening here in this spiritual conversation that just took place between Jesus and the woman at the well. And he begins to then teach them from this opportunity. And it's pretty amazing when you think about Jesus and what he's doing throughout his time in this 3-year ministry, right? Or however long it was, roughly 3. But not only is he teaching other people, but he's also constantly teaching his disciples and constantly dealing with sometimes their disbelief, sometimes their lack of faith, sometimes they're questioning his very motives in what he's doing. But nonetheless, he still takes the opportunity to slow down, to use this as a teaching opportunity. So he says, the food that I'm going to consume, right, my food is to do the will of him who sent me and to finish his work. And we kind of closed on some of these thoughts last week and talking about how this was his nourishment, right? This is what was going to bring fulfillment in his life was to do the will of God. That was what his purpose and what his mission was and where his focus was. Well, he's going to continue this conversation that's somewhat going to revolve around food, but he's going to continue to build on these spiritual lessons. Well, the last thing that we looked at from verses 31 through 34 is that Jesus took advantage of spiritual opportunities at the cost of physical loss. So even if he had to miss a meal, he's still going to take the opportunity to teach her, right? He's not going to miss that opportunity. But as you continue to work through the text and you get to verse 35, he then transitions. He's talking about, right, they come asking about food. He points to doing the will and the work of God. And then he's going to point to this harvest, which is something that would produce food, but he's still going to use it as an opportunity to bring a spiritual lesson. So he says in verse 35, "Do you not say there are still 4 months and then comes the harvest? Behold, I say to you, lift up your eyes and look at the fields, for they are already white for harvest." The point we can take from this is that Jesus believed that there are always souls ready for the harvest. And I think what's really important in here is perspective. Because Jesus, when questioned about hunger and food, he pointed to his nourishment and his satisfaction and his fulfillment in life being doing the work of God. Then he took the conversation from food to the will of God, and then he goes to this idea of harvest, which is also rooted in the idea of food that you can receive from it, but he's still driving a spiritual lesson. And Jesus in this is correcting the mindset of, well, I'll get to it later. Or maybe I still have a little bit of time, I could handle this tomorrow. Maybe it's not all that important today, but I can get to it sometime next week. And remember what we're talking about. We're talking about lessons in evangelism. We're looking at lessons from Jesus and his teaching other people, and he brings this up to them and say, are you of the mindset, well, the harvest is in 4 months, so we'll wait till then? Or are you of the mindset that there's plenty to do right now? That there's plenty for everyone to be doing right now? He is correcting his own disciples, and it seems somewhat because of a short-sighted view of their work and responsibility. And I think part of that's rooted in the fact that they say, well, this is some Samaritan woman. What are we going to do here? We can very easily become of the same mindset and say, you know what, well, this is just so-and-so, or this is just so-and-so. What are we going to do there? Jesus' point here is that there is opportunity at hand, and too often we fail to see the opportunity at hand rather than to capitalize on the moment. So, the problem, I don't think, often for us is a lack of opportunity. And I suppose maybe it's not even the fact that we would think that evangelism is seasonal. Maybe it's more so just we don't see the opportunity when it presents itself. And we've talked about that a lot throughout many of these points. But nonetheless, you think about verses like Matthew chapter 9, verse 37 through 38. Right, the harvest is plentiful, but what?
Laborers are few.
Laborers are few. Few are the workers. 2 Timothy chapter 4 and verse 2. Preach the word. Be ready when you're ready. Right? In season, out of season, to take a quote from Marshall Keeble, when they wants to hear it, when they don't wants to hear it. We need to be ready to preach the word. We need to be ready to teach people. It's not a seasonal thing, and there's always opportunity at hand. It's just whether or not we're ready to go to work and share the gospel with somebody else. That's really what he's driving at here. They saw obstacles. They saw delays, and he saw people ready to respond. And in that, if we think about it and how we're operating today and trying to do more evangelism, evangelism then requires awareness and recognizing opportunities when they present themselves. You know, we have people on a daily basis that we either see at work, that we see at the grocery store, that we see at the gas pump, that we see wherever it is that we go during the day, whatever we do, whatever our hobbies are, we see people all the time. How many conversations do we have about spiritual matters? How many opportunities do we have about it, but we just don't take the opportunity? And maybe we even think about it and say, you know what, this is a good chance right here, and you think, maybe not now. It's not that much different from having the mindset, well, I'll get to it tomorrow. Right? I think what he's trying to get to here is the focus on there's work to do right now. And just the same, we have plenty of work to do, and we have to train our eyes to see souls, not just people that we pass by. Right? All right. Look down to verse 36. Verse 36. He says, and he who reaps receives wages and gathers fruit for eternal life, that both he who sows and he who reaps may rejoice together. Jesus saw joy in the future of both the soul winner and the soul won. And I hope we at least see, or at least think about it in the sense that it is a shared joy, right? That we get to experience with the person that we're trying to teach, that they get to experience through receiving that word, and you continue to enjoy that as you continue to teach them and they grow, and it's just something that everybody can enjoy. And I think maybe part of the problem is that we have maybe one or two more difficult opportunities that arise. And maybe that kind of gives us a mindset, well, I don't know if I really want to be involved in this. Right? If it's too difficult with one, then all of a sudden you're thinking, you know what, I don't know if I want to go through that again. And you completely miss the side of joy that's found in the work that we're doing. And we're talking about joy that goes all the way to heaven. Think about Luke chapter 15 and verse 7. Somebody read Luke chapter 15 and verse 7. Or if you remember it, you can quote it. But think about what's taking place here and what's being said and how this connects to our work in evangelism still today.
I say to you that likewise there will be more joy in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 just persons who need no repentance.
One that repents, rejoicing in heaven. And I don't know if we associate our works here that often with rejoicing that takes place in heaven. But nonetheless, the joy that we can experience in sharing with somebody the gospel, them receiving that, they're going to receive all kinds of joy by their obedience unto the gospel. And in the process of all of this, it's also said that there's rejoicing in heaven through those works. And we're part of that. And it should motivate us even that much more to want to do it. Right? I just wonder if we see it like this. Is bringing a soul to Christ a highlight of your life? Would you consider it a highlight? Bringing a soul to Christ? We should, right? I mean, that's the work and responsibility that we're supposed to take on, that we're to continue to do throughout our lives. It should bring great joy.
It's like a new birth.
Like a new birth. But how often is it the case that the church has more of the mindset like, oh, man, I got to go through that. I got to do this. I got to do that. Missing out completely on the joy that can be experienced within the studying with another person and leading that soul to Christ. Missing out on it completely. Well, I suppose, even as mentioned earlier, through some efforts that might bring temporary stress, it could cause us to lose sight of the ones that bring about eternal satisfaction. And I think about the Apostle Paul, and he was writing to the brethren there of Thessalonica. And he spoke of them in a way in which they were his crown and his joy. And you know what he connected his crown and joy in them to? And what exactly it was? That those that he had taught, those that he had led to Christ, would be received up to Christ in the end. His crown, his joy. He spoke of the Philippians the same way. Philippians chapter 4 and verse 1, you're my crown and joy. Those whom he had taught, those whom he had led to Christ, that was his crown and joy. Of all things, great joy in it. In all our works as Christians, whether it's caring for people, loving people, laboring for people, serving others, leading, whatever the case may be, in my own estimation, there is no other part that brings as much joy as leading somebody to Christ in our Christian walk. And you might say, well, I think maybe leading my kids to Christ is better than that. And I would say, well, that's still leading souls to Christ. Right? So it's still the same. And we take great joy in that. And it's something we understand brings joy, but yet something we're reluctant to do. Right? Verse 37 and verse 38. Thoughts or comments as we go through this?
Maybe where you're going with 37, 38, but when he talks in 36, he who sows and he who reaps, about how it is that everybody's working together and not necessarily doing the same aspect in it, but everybody's working toward the same end.
Yeah. And it's very much in the direction we're going to go, that we're all working for the same purpose. Right? And no matter how many are involved in it, we're all going to rejoice in that same work. We're all going to give glory to God in that same work. And we might all have different roles or different ways in which we help out, but nonetheless, we're still all part of this. So verses 37 and verse 38. It says, "For in this the saying is true, one sows and another reaps. I sent you to reap that for which you have not labored. Others have labored, and you have entered into their labors." Some of the wording on these points are a little awkward. I think we'll understand what it means. But these were produced by House to House, the teaching points. Jesus recognized that some conversions require time and more than one teacher. And I don't know, I think about it maybe in the sense that some conversions require more time and more than one teacher, right? And at least there's going to be a lot of effort that goes into each and every one of them. But also it's not always going to be the case that just one person, right, seals the deal, if you want to say it like that. Oftentimes it's going to be a multitude of people who are working for the same cause. So when you think about what he's saying here, he's indicating that others have labored in Samaria and prepared the way for this harvest. Who are these other laborers? Prophets, good possibility. John the Baptist. Maybe some of John the Baptist's followers could have been some of them that had actually gone through at some point. Nonetheless, what he's saying is that some other people have gone through here. They have put in some work already, and now you're going to reap the reward of their labors. And what he's saying is that all are going to reap the same reward, right? We're all enjoying the same thing, regardless of how many were involved in this. And perhaps maybe it's a reference to the prophets and their work. We know that the woman at the well, she had some idea that the Messiah was coming. So it's possible she had heard something from through the writings of the prophets, something from others who passed through there. Well, then you have Jesus who comes onto the scene, and now he's talking with her. You have his disciples who are there with them now. And then we know even further from that, if you think about further into the book of Acts, you're going to have Philip who goes through Samaria, and you're going to have Peter and John who go through Samaria. And it's when Philip, Peter, and John are there when everything comes to its fulfillment. So how many people were involved in this work that took place in Samaria? A whole lot, right? But it's all for the same purpose. Preston and Aaron.
And it could even be the woman at the well herself.
Mm-hmm.
And that when Jesus comes in and talks with her, like you say, she had some awareness, but then she goes to the city. Once you get into verse 39 and following, you find that there were a lot of the people from the city actually coming out. And so it could be in the sense that as Jesus is telling them these things, they're watching all of this giant crowd coming toward them, even just to say that she's the one who's planting the seed in their mind.
Mm-hmm.
Now they're coming out, and you get to be here to help tell them who I am.
Yeah, very much could have been part of her efforts, the things that she told the people in the city. They're coming out, maybe she's telling more. So she could very much be part of this. Jesus very much part of this. His disciples, as much as they were struggling with seeing that the Samaritans needed to be taught, they were part of this. Any who came before, all the way up to Philip, Peter, and John, all working for the same cause, all working for the same purpose. So there's good lessons that we can take from, these efforts and what Jesus is saying here to his disciples. They and we are not in the work alone. Efforts in evangelism are never wasted, and the seed may sit dormant for months or even years before it takes root. And that's one of the things that is kind of challenging, because maybe you study with somebody, let's say next week, and that person doesn't actually obey the gospel for another 2 years. Do you feel like you labored in vain with that? Absolutely not, right? We're still working for the same purpose. Well, those who sow may not see the harvest, but those who reap will see it and give thanks for the faithfulness of the laborers who were there before them, as well as for the faithfulness of God. I'll give you a lifetime example, and just think about how many people are involved in the work up here at the jail. Coach goes up there, Alvin goes up there, Aaron goes up there, some of the guys from the home go up there, I myself go up there. You know how many times we have conversations between one another about this individual or about that individual? I don't know how many times Aaron's come to me and he said, hey, when you get in there, this name, so-and-so, you need to talk to him. He's primed, he's ready, he's ready to be baptized, right? And it's a group effort, all working for the same cause. Well, think about that congregationally. How many conversations are we having about people that, man, this person's close, or I've been studying with this person, maybe you could help in this aspect, right? It's a group effort, a congregational effort, so we can be helping each other in that. Paul said, I planted, Apollos watered, but God gave the increase. Right? It's a group effort. Still is just the same today. I think we got 2 more points here. Let's see if we can get through these. All right, verses 39 through 41. And many of the Samaritans of that city believed in him because of the word of the woman who testified, he told me all that I ever did. So when the Samaritans had come to him, they urged him to stay with them, and he stayed there 2 days. And many more believed because of his own word. Jesus rearranged his schedule when souls were at stake. That might be a hard one, huh? Think about an opportunity that presents itself and it would require you to stop what you were doing. Say, you know what, I'm not going to go do that right now. I'm going to take this opportunity that is at hand. That's actually probably a little bit harder than we'd like to admit. It's not a hard thing to do, but maybe we struggle with it more than we would like to admit, because we got our schedule and we're keeping on that schedule and we're going to do what we set out to do. Nonetheless, you think about what's happening here with Jesus, he's good with it. They want him to stay. His disciples are wondering, what are we doing here? Why are we here with the Samaritans? Jesus is going to stay. He's going to change his plan and adjust his plans to make sure that they can be spiritually fed. What can we learn from this as far as thinking about how Jesus is willing to make change so quick? What can we learn from it, and how can we apply that today?
Souls are worth more than our time.
Souls are worth more than what?
Than our time.
Than our time? Absolutely. Souls are more important than personal agenda.
Well, these people were eager.
Hmm.
They were eager to learn more, to hear more.
Yeah.
And so it'd be really difficult for them to back just turn around and go, I don't have time for you today. I got to do it here.
Yeah. I mean, they were spiritually hungry. You think about the whole scenario, and I mean, this woman at the well has been taught by him, and she's fully believing that he is who he claims to be, and she goes back into the city, tells everybody else they're coming to see if this truly is the Messiah. Out there spiritually hungry, and he's willing to go ahead and stay several days there in Samaria. Again, remember, most Jews would have said, you know what, we're going to go the long way around and we're not going to step foot on this soil. We're going to make sure we have nothing to do with them, but yet he's willing to stay there. What's that?
These people in verse 41 says they are telling her that they believe
Yeah,
what he said.
right. I find that interesting because it's kind of just strange that that's thrown in there. Like, they came because she told them about it, but at the same time, it's like it reminds us, well, they didn't believe because of that, but they did believe because they heard him. So it's kind of interesting that that's there.
Maybe
We'll
we
have
can
to,
check it out.
yeah,
Well, let's go see about this.
yeah, yeah. We will have to finish up in the next class, but it won't take us long in the next one to finish.